Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today for today's event. I'm Hannah Jennings, a community organizer at Tech in Motion, and I'm really excited to welcome you all to today's conversation. As we get started, continue to introduce yourself in the chat, say hello, let us know where you're tuning in from, your current role, any interesting projects you're working on relevant to today's conversation. And if you have any questions, feel free to throw those in the Q&A section at any time, and we'll do our best to address as many as possible during today's live session. We're also recording the conversation, so if you have to hop off early or want to share it with a colleague after today's event, we'll make sure you get the recording following today's webinar. For those of you who have joined a Tech in Motion event before, you know we've been bringing together the tech community since 2011 when Motion Recruitment launched this event series. It's really always been about learning from industry leaders, building real connections, and staying ahead of what's next in technology. Today, as part of Kelly's technology division, Motion supports organizations and technologists as they tackle complex technology challenges. So whether that's building specialized teams, modernizing systems, scaling infrastructure, or advancing cloud, data, or AI initiatives, our team's focus is really on helping customers move faster with confidence. So if you're hiring critical talent, transforming how work gets done, or trying to figure out how to deploy AI responsibly, these are all challenges our team solves every day. So with that, that brings us to why we're here today. Today, you'll hear from tech leaders on how AI is transforming product and design workflows right now. Our panelists have built across gaming, medtech, robotics, fintech, and they'll share where AI is genuinely moving the needle for them, which tools are delivering real value, where the technology is still falling short, and how to make your portfolio and skills stand out in a world increasingly flooded with AI-generated work. We're going to drop a quick poll in the chat right now, so let us know where you are in your AI journey and experience so we have a good sense of who is in the room and we can tailor the conversation to that. Now with that, I'm happy to welcome back our host, Chris Craig. Chris is a senior product leader with over 10 years of experience spearheading the design, development, and delivery of innovative industry-leading products across education, media and entertainment, AI, gaming, health and wellness. Chris, we're excited to have you back for another event. I will let you take it away from here.
Well, thank you for the introduction, and thank you everyone for joining. I love to see the introductions over here in the chat. I see some product managers, some product design leaders. I see folks in business management. So thanks for joining us today. It's very interesting. I've always considered myself a full stack product manager, and I've thought that full stack product manager, that it was a new term that I had developed, meaning that I understand infrastructure all the way to deployment, all the way to sunset, right? And I considered that to be a full stack product manager. Well, I think what we're learning nowadays is that full stack product manager and the product role in general, as well as the design role, is very much transforming in an AI first era. When I was asked to moderate for this event, I took a minute and I looked at kind of what the routine was going to be, what the process was going to be, and I was asked to do this 2-minute introduction. I was asked to introduce myself and introduce the event, right? And so the first thing that I did is I thought about what I could use to write that introduction, right? And I thought, okay, you know what? I'll just go prompt ChatGPT or I'll go prompt Claude and I'll just read it from there. I'll read whatever it gives me as my introduction. And given the theme and kind of the discussion topic that we have, I thought it was very interesting that my first thought in an AI first era was not to write it by hand, not to come up with my own introduction, was to look at Claude and ChatGPT and say, maybe they could write the introduction. Maybe AI could write a better introduction than I could. And I decided that I would go with my own introduction, a human first introduction that is, let's say, AI native in that way. So today, that being said, we are going to talk about product. We're going to talk about design. We're going to go through multiple different kind of topics. If you have any questions, please do leave those in the Q&A and we'll get to those at the end. But I'm very excited to have this discussion with these amazing panelists who we'll bring on in just a second here. And thank you again, everyone, for joining. This is going to be a fantastic and insightful discussion, again, around product and design in an AI first era. And welcome now to the stage our three panelists, Tanya, Andrew, and Corinne. We have a hand wave from Tanya and other folks. So we are going to go ahead and chat a little bit now. So again, if you have any questions, please leave those in the actual Q&A section. Otherwise, we're going to go and chat about AI. So let's start this off with AI's impact on product and design work. So one of the things that I've heard a lot talking to folks in the community and talking to organizations is this introduction of TTV, time to value. How can you get to value faster with AI? How can we be more efficient and productive with AI, right? So the first question I want to throw out here for us to discuss is, which workflows are seeing the biggest productivity gains right now relative to AI? And anyone can take this, but again, the question is, which workflows are seeing the biggest productivity gains right now? And feel free to use examples of how you're using it in your organizations as well.
Well, I can take the first one, actually. So I do a lot of user interviews and feedback, and I love using tools like Otter and now Dovetail as well to just help me synthesize and get those transcripts. And then also I can search and be like, oh, I remember they said something about, click through or something like that. And then I can go back to those points and then even take clips, an audio clip from that interview, and then use that in my ammunition to campaign for a feature.
So it's interesting there because we're talking about an AI first era, but that is like a human first approach in the way that you're taking it, and that you're taking the user information and then you're using that. You're using the AI tool to then make sure you have a better understanding of the human experience that is actually happening. Corinne, go ahead.
Right? No. I think that we're getting to the same conclusion, right? AI is enabling us to make those human connections faster.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Tanya, or Andrew, any words on that one?
Yeah. I can go. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, please.
So I think AI is definitely today exceeded expectations and improved the quality of work that we bring, and it definitely saves time, has made things faster. I have been in the startup ecosystem for a long time. I think it's most helped founders and even within startups, most startups now promote unlimited token usage, and it acts as a great thought partner. It acts as a great starting point for when you don't know where to go, what to do. It helps you pull relevant research. I think the one workflow that it hasn't been doing the best at now is design, but even that is coming up so quickly. As a PM, I've used it extensively in PRDs, prototyping. I think building and showing always is better than handing someone a PRD and saying this is where you go from. So I think that adding that visual component to a PRD has definitely helped, and I think engineers have fully accepted it now. It's made the biggest difference in engineering specifically. That's kind of where I see it being used in the day-to-day.
I really appreciate your reference to the PRD. Having written lots of PRDs myself, they are not usually stories or novels that you want to publish like a book, right? And to your point, they're not usually the most, I'll say, entertaining. They're very straight to the point. It's very thorough. It's very much like reading documentation. And I think AI has made an impact in not only generating the PRDs being a lot faster and more simple, but then also making them more, this is an odd way to put it, but human readable, so that they're easier to understand. So I definitely resonate with your point there.
Yeah, and I would just follow up what I've seen, not in my own space, what's helped me the most, but definitely would agree that engineering has seen some of the biggest increases in workflow. In my world, to kind of piggyback on Corinne's perspective here, is that I've seen, so I'm in conversation design, and what better data to pull from for conversation design to have live conversations with our audience than to go to our call center and look at the conversations that are happening there. The problem is that we're talking about thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of transcripts and more. Depending on the org, you can be in the millions. So how do you effectively work through that level of content with granularity? You can look at things in broad strokes, but really drilling down into what are again, those starting with the human, those human conversations that are so rich with data and insight. So being able to pull those in, synthesize those, and work through them in whatever fidelity, either broad strokes or fine-tuned, that ability, it's not just made certain things faster, it's made certain things possible that just weren't possible before. And so that's one area where I'm seeing a huge benefit to not just doing things faster, but a different level of quality that wasn't achievable before.
I like that, where it's like you're not just focused on the time to value or the efficiency, but it's also the look at quality, right? And that perspective as well. Also, I'll just have a human moment here. I just realized your hat actually has like a cool little like actual design on it. And again, I do like the human moment that you get to have there, where you're like, oh, that I understand that. That's actually that's pretty funny. Okay, so we'll do another question in like kind of this product and design work, the AI's impact area. This is an interesting question, and we will try to kind of keep it a little bit concise. But are we? And I think it relates a little bit to Andrew's point. Are we just moving faster with AI, or actually building fundamentally different kinds of products, right? So again, I'll ask the question again. Are we just moving faster with AI, or actually building fundamentally different kinds of products? And given that you're all in different kind of workspaces on the panelist side, I think interesting to see how this affects your general area as far as like the efficiency and speed versus are you actually building things that are fundamentally different from a product standpoint? So feel free, anybody, to take that one.
Well, not only am I using AI in my workflow, right, but I'm also building for integrating other AI like inputs into our product. So maybe you vibe coded something, but now for the product I'm working on now, we can intake some of that vibe code and help you build out the infrastructure that would support it. So I think it's also integrating AI on both ends, like as an input, as well as something you're using to produce the product itself.
I appreciate that too, because I think you bring up the whole idea of the adoption implementation standpoint for with AI, right? So what does it look like to not only move faster, but then to actually do the implementation where you're building things that are fundamentally different, still productive and useful to the users, but yeah, fundamentally different in that way. Andrew, Tanya, any points on that one?
I think today, like I touched upon a little bit before, like earlier was just a PRD that you'd hand off to design and it would go on to like engineering. But I think like roles are blurring so quickly today that it is definitely faster and it is definitely fundamentally different. Like it's kind of hard to pick one versus the other. Like today, like the workflow is the PM prototypes it, and then like maybe the designer comes in and like makes a few tweaks, and then like engineering just like either it goes directly into production, or sometimes like engineering makes a couple of tweaks, and then and like and you're not even like, you know, today you can like build anything so quickly that I think figuring out what to build is where like most of the primary focus and like energy lies in, and like building the right thing as compared to, you know, thinking about what how we're going to build it. I think that question's like a little bit easier now. I think those are like some of the initial changes that I feel like are coming.
Well, I like the point you made there too, because of the fact that it really, for both product design and product management, it has really shifted from a we really need process to we really need like the best outcomes, right? And then what are the ideas that then lead us to the best outcomes, right? So I think there is like a fundamental shift. And the other thing I'll throw in here too is like I've spoken to so many organizations, and all we're talking about is MCPs and a builder role, right? Where the builder is one and the same. It's the PM, the product designer, the data scientist, the QA, and the engineer roles all put into one. Which again, there are very much mixed opinions about that too. But I think that is part of what's happening in the AI kind of like first era. Andrew, any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, I think from a speed perspective, you have to ask yourself, I think it's important to look at the different stages of maturity that your organization is in. So I think the answer to this looks very different. For example, if your organization is early or coming into adopting AI right now, you might be looking at, okay, how does PM become more efficient? Or how does design become more efficient? Or how does, you name it, right? Name the field, engineering. And we can see speed increases there, which might have some marginal impact. But at the end of the day, what's really important, and this is that next phase of maturity, which is looking at the end-to-end process and say, where do we not have great process? That's most likely going to be the bottleneck. So everyone else can move faster, and then we hit this phase and everything slows way down. So that might, if you're in a regulated institution like I am, that might be legal risk and compliance reviews. Very human, very manual. You don't want to trust AI to do your legal reviews if you're highly regulated, right? That would be a bad use of AI if you're cavalier with it, right? So looking at that end-to-end process, if we want to get to market faster, then it's an end-to-end experience, end-to-end workflow that you need to consider, because I might speed up my department, but it might take way longer at the next phase because of that change. So I think it really depends on your organization. Start with what can I control, but then very quickly, that impact will be great for a moment. But then you're going to have to expand your view and say, what does the end-to-end flow look like? And are we optimized to actually get to market faster, or just is my team more efficient? And we're doing a lot more deliverables that then get handed off and create a bottleneck, and we get backed up. Well, that's not really getting to market faster. So I think that's really key to pay attention to, is where are we in the maturity curve of adopting AI? And so what does that mean for where I'm at right now?
I think one of the interesting parts about that maturity metric too is it's the same as before AI was even a thing that we used, right? Like the maturity of a product organization, right? I heard a product leader from Amplitude one time. I went to a product conference and he said, your team health is reflected in what you ship, right? And so I think that entire idea of maturity, right? It is a shared element between pre-Gen AI and current AI first era, right? Where like you do have to develop that maturity within your product organization, within each department, right? To then ultimately ship that product that is both good for your business, but then also good for your customer in solving the problems they're looking to solve. So I like that maturity metric. I think that's, if you have not written about that, I believe you should write about that and share it with us, because I feel like a lot of people would resonate with that. That being said, we're going to move into another section of kind of topics at this point. We're going to talk a little bit about, we've talked about kind of a broader view of what you could do with the tools, some of the things around efficiency. Let's just talk about practical applications and AI tooling, right? So I'm going to give you a question that when I looked at it, I was like, that's not a really difficult question, but it actually is kind of. So take a second to think about this one. Which AI tools feel essential in your current product or design workflow, and why? Let me ask that one more time. Which AI tools feel essential in your current product or design workflow, and why? And the reason why I'm saying this seems, when I looked at it, it was like, oh, that's a simple question. It's absolutely not, in my opinion. So feel free, anybody who wants to take that one. Which AI tools feel essential in your current product or design workflow, and why?
I can go.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, Tanya, all you.
I think in terms of general reasoning, writing PRDs, building prototypes quickly, I've used ChatGPT and Claude extensively. Anything that's a little bit more generic. I think a very underutilized tool is Perplexity. I think it's great for doing like a first round of user research when you don't know where to start. I think it can pull like user sentiment very clearly, unlike, I think Claude can do like a lot of it now too, but I think Perplexity just does a better job at it so far. It's easy to kind of, do like a lot of market sizing and valuation if, you are like in a more senior position and need to think about doing that. Then in terms of coding, like Cursor and Claude Code is like pretty standard. Those are both tools that you can learn very quickly yourself. You just have to like pick a problem that, you kind of feel interested in solving and then, say, I want to build this. Prototyping, I've used Claude Design's been great. Figma Make's been really great. For meeting, like any kind of meeting, like user interviews, things like that, I really enjoyed using Granola. I truly feel like a strong passion toward it. I think that it is like one of the best, like, meeting tools out there. There are several good ones out there, but I think that when we think about tooling in general, it's very helpful to start thinking about the problem you're trying to solve first, and then, picking the tooling that's most appropriate for it. I think switching cost is very low today. So like, unless like you're in a big regulated organization, then things are very different. But if you're at a smaller, like early stage company, or like a startup, or like a small company, it's very easy to switch. So I think, if you think about the problem you're trying to solve and then like reverse engineer and like look for tools that'll help you do that, I think that is definitely like the way to get started, and find the right tools that work for your workflow.
And I appreciate how you bring up the tooling specifically, like Perplexity, Copilot, Claude, OpenAI, depending on what you need to use. It does need to, and the reason I bring this up, it does, again, bring into the same element as before AI existed. You still have to identify that problem or the solution you're seeking, right? Before any of this is something that you would say, oh, I'll use Gemini, I'll use Perplexity, I'll use Claude, right? So it's still, there's a core element of, you still have to understand the problem that you're going to approach or the outcome you're looking for. That portion has not disappeared. And in the areas where it has disappeared, those organizations have probably not seen the ROI that they thought to some extent from what they've built.
Yeah, I'll use Figma Make a lot to do some quick iterations on something in the beginning, and then sometimes it'll give me ideas, but I almost always go back and then redo the work myself. So it's almost more of an ideation tool for me than it is a tool to finish anything.
I like that. Partially, I have a friend who works he's a PM at NBC Universal. And he also, on the side, he likes Dungeons and Dragons, Magic the Gathering, right? So he sent me something, he sent me a graphic that he built, right? And I asked him, I said, oh, did you build this with Gen AI? Did you use a tool to build this? And he kind of gave a similar example to what you said. He said, yeah, I used it to start, and then I took it to Photoshop and I did the editing myself, right? So I think there's, again, it's like an interesting intersection of, there's the AI component, but there's still the human review, overview, tweaks, right, that you would make without using the AI tool. Actually, it's like a partnership in that way.
Yeah, it's like I apply taste to the AI, because a lot of times what it will initially give me is so lacking of taste. So they're good, but not great.
Yeah, that's a great point to make as well. The idea, similar to Andrew's metric around maturity, I think taste, if we talk about product design, definitely one that we would think about, right? You're not going to probably hear that in a business intelligence meeting, right? But it is a thing on the human side where it's like taste needs to be accounted for, because taste and empathy are also very close to each other in the product side of things. Andrew, any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I would just one thing to build on what Corinne is saying, humans are still the most valuable, not, yes, most expensive also, but still the most valuable asset in any organization. And when you have specialization in any space, utilize them to their fullest potential. So if I'm a PM and I don't have great design chops and there is no designer, then AI is a godsend, right? Because it can unblock me from delivering a design. However, if I'm a PM, it can get me started to then let that human with that expertise take it to the next level. I think the fear is that we're only looking at efficiency as a metric. I'm saying we as the industry right now, this is how AI was kind of marketed, right? Primarily on the efficiency and money savings. But the quality opportunity here is still there when we bring humans and tools together. And so if I can give a designer a head start with some better direction and more visuals to communicate my idea, and then they can take that human expertise of 5, 10, 20 years of experience that cannot be, all that context can't be fed to the AI every single time, right? They're going to bring that in seconds, then do that. So it really, I think when we're thinking about tools, it's, again, thinking about the maturity of where you're at. Do we have people that have expertise in this area, or do we not, right? I'd much rather ship something that's pretty good than ship nothing. If I don't have a designer to take on the task, then I still want to ship something pretty good. If I do have a designer, I absolutely don't want to ship something pretty good if I can ship something really great with a little bit of extra time, but so much better in the results that it can bring through that specialization.
I like that, and as you were speaking, there's some chats that I think align with what you were talking about. I think that the name is Camilo said, "I like to treat it as a tool, not a coworker. The human is the one making decisions." I think that's actually a great way to state it. And I think Jason Barrett also said the same thing around, like, it's great to get your starting point, but the human refinement and then going in and like making those quality changes yourself is still a big element to this. And I think we talked about this a little bit as a group prior to this call. It's like, I think a lot of people treat or like to try to treat AI as an operating system when it is not necessarily at that point yet. Where it can make every decision fundamentally that's good for you and your users. I'm not saying it won't be there, right? But I am saying I don't think we're at a point where, this is not the greatest metaphor, but like, it's not Windows XP. Not that Windows XP was some massive thing, but at the time it was, to be fair. So yeah, AI is really not an operating system. It really is a tool, more so than the thing that you lean on to be your human that helps you, So let's go on to another question around the same area. And this one is kind of like a more kind of broader question. It is a little bit, I'll give you some time to think about it too. Let's say I am like brand new to AI design. I'm overwhelmed. There's too much going on. Where's the best place to start learning what tools to apply to UX UI design specifically? So I'll ask that one more time. So let's say I'm new to AI. I'm a little bit overwhelmed. There's so many tools. I mean, we listed like probably 10, and the chat probably listed another 5 that we didn't list, right? So where's the best place to start learning what tools apply to UX UI design?
Well, I think you can start by...
Oh, we keep doing this. Go ahead, Corinne.
Okay. I think you can start by asking your friends who are in the industry, like, what are you using? What do you like? I ask a lot of people, like, what's the latest and greatest? Because it seems like something new is coming out every week, and try and keep up to date. I'm on a number of like email lists and newsletters too, but there's no way I could just intake the amount of information coming at me. And I've asked ChatGPT, like, what is the latest, greatest design tool for XYZ, and then explored that. But I also abandon tools really quickly if they aren't working for me. So it's just like a website. Like, you have bounce rates for AI tools as well.
I appreciate you stating that, because it's also the element of like, I appreciate people that are very big early adopters, advocates of like a new model of a new engine being used in one of the tools, right? But I do kind of laugh to myself sometimes where they're like, oh, but did you try it with the Opus 7.3.8, like Gemini 12? It's like, I get it. I totally understand what you're saying, right? But it is, I think it goes back to Tanya's point earlier, where it's like the tools are there, but you still have to have the problem and solution and the thing you're seeking to start, right? Because they are going to update the models, just like they update our phones and the other softwares we use. But like, you do want to go back to the human element, to your point, Corinne, right? You want to go back to the human element. What are your friends using? What are your coworkers using? What are people seeing success with? And if you ask Copilot or you ask Claude that question, they're going to say Claude and Copilot. So it's better to talk to a human in that regard. Any other thoughts on that question?
I do think word of mouth is just always going to be the most powerful marketing technique. Sorry.
True.
100%. I couldn't agree more. I would say, rather than having the question of what tool should I be using, start with what problem am I trying to solve? In general, right now in AI, it's often, we're going to implement AI. Now, what problem should that solve? As opposed to really getting comfortable in the problem space and really understanding the problem space and being comfortable staying there for a little longer than feels comfortable. So for yourself, I think if you spent some time saying, what are the actual challenges I'm having in design, then and actually like go a little deeper, even ask yourself like, tell me more about that, and actually interview yourself a little bit. You'll be surprised at the problems you didn't even know you were having. Now you can use AI to do this. You could go to Claude or ChatGPT and say, interview me and don't be satisfied with surface level answers. Ask me really what are the challenges I'm facing right now, and don't rush to give me an answer. Let's just stay there for a while, right? And take 10 minutes to have a back and forth, and then take that output. Now you can feed that back into AI, right? And try it on Claude versus ChatGPT versus Gemini and see what you get. I guarantee you, having that deeper level of context of what problems you actually have and could solve, you'll get a lot further down that road. But just get comfortable staying in the problem space a little longer. And I think that'll really narrow down that list from like, oh my gosh, there's 1,000 different tools and different versions of those tools, to there's like 2 or 3 things that could potentially really be useful for me right now.
Well, I like what you said too, because that's also a human first kind of area too, right? Being in the products or the problem space versus the solution space, that issue has existed, and that dynamic has existed pre-AI as well, right? When you think you've identified the problem, right? But actually you've just identified a symptom and you haven't gone deep enough to get to the root cause, right? Similar to like a doctor, right? You may have just identified the symptom and then you go to the solution before you've identified the actual problem you're trying to solve. And that is going to require human thinking, a human brain, more so than something that just takes in context and prompts. So I like the parallel of this idea of the problem space and the solution space. And still, again, it is a human first approach to that. Because otherwise, to some extent, you're probably going to be building a bunch of stuff that doesn't solve those problems. If we talk about the efficiency productivity side of AI. Yeah, Andrew?
Yeah, so I mean, I think the point you're making is we need to apply holistic medicine to the way we work as well. There's maybe a parallel here.
Yep. Tanya, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think, like Corinne and Andrew already touched upon the starting part of it. I think one thing that, I've seen, like, people on my team kind of get discouraged with very quickly is that, you try using AI once to produce a certain output and you immediately get discouraged when it's not what you were expecting or it wasn't as great. And I think that's kind of where you need to use a little bit of your judgment and taste and the experience that you have in refining that output and using AI to do it. And I think then you can like produce something that's really good irrespective of the tool you're using. I think, all of them have like pros and cons, but I think like sticking with it a little bit longer and kind of learning how to prompt correctly, how to like, how to use, tokens appropriately so you're not like burning through your organization's, token usage quickly. But I think spending some time in like learning how to use it well also makes a very big difference in kind of sticking with it for a bit and seeing that, and then like applying your like judgment and taste to it is what makes like a huge difference.
Yeah, I think that actually also goes into kind of like our next topic as well. As we talk about, we've talked a little bit about adoption, right? We've talked about implementation and strategy there. And I think the thing we've talked about for the most part is the positives, like the productive things we've seen so far. But one of the things I kind of want to dive into, and also everybody in the audience, remember, we will get to your questions. Please do vote on those in the Q&A section. We'll get to the ones that are the most voted, to be honest. So do check those. But the question I want to ask in relation to our last kind of topic, what do you think the biggest mistake companies are making right now when it comes to adopting AI? And I think we're going to do kind of a counterpoint on this because we were talking more about the productive, the gains, the things you can get from it. But what's the biggest mistake companies are making right now when adopting AI? And one thing I'll throw in there is I think we've already identified one, which is adopting the tooling and not adopting the problem. So that might be one we could talk about. But yeah, what are the biggest mistakes that are being made right now when companies are like adopting AI?
I think there's a few different levels of problems that we see. One is very basic. It's simply understanding how the technology works. Spending a little bit of time to really get outside of the hype or the way that AI has been marketed. That's going to be the loudest voice, right? The lovers and the haters are going to get the most attention, but that sweet spot in the middle, which is like, what actually is this thing? Looking at it agnostically, or not as a good or a bad thing, but as a thing that can do some things well and some things not so well. I think spending a little more time there, it could really make a huge difference, because decisions often get made without full context of how AI works. And so oftentimes I think we miss the true opportunities of where it can benefit an organization because our understanding of it is a little off. And when, depending on the size of your organization, that decision, if it's a big organization, that ship takes forever to change course, right? And so really slowing down. I know nobody wants to hear that in the age of AI is go slower, but going slower at the beginning really helps you to move faster in the end, because you don't have to course correct, right? And so that to me is the first level of opportunity to correct mistakes, which is really understand what it's capable of. And that means not only asking, what can this thing do for me, but what happens when it goes wrong, or what are the limitations in that? Or talking to somebody who doesn't have an agenda on selling you that product or getting you that contract started, but really speaking to some voices that don't have an agenda in terms of selling the thing. That to me is a huge opportunity for anybody at any level of an organization. It's just to slow down and say, okay, I know what it can do if everything goes right. What are the chances that that is going to happen? Okay, if these things go wrong, what are the implications of that? And you can only answer that if you just have some base level understanding of how the technology works. So that would be like, I'll stop there to let others talk, but that's where I would start as one of the biggest and easiest opportunities of where we can overcome some of these mistakes that are made.
Yeah, I think just to point out in the chat, Robin added in, he said, Andrew, you're 100% correct. The FOMO leads to speed mantra from leadership. And I think that speed mantra existed again before AI was something that was being adopted. The idea that how fast can we get it done? I used to make a joke that, like, what if we just skip engineering and QA and launch it? Because that really is sometimes what you get asked to do, right? You're like, we don't even need to build it. Let's just launch whatever we have. And it's like, well, my friend, we only have a PRD, and I don't think that's going to serve anybody. So yeah, I do appreciate that. And Robin, thanks for the insights there. Corinne, I think you had something you wanted to add.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's funny because people now with AI are just collapsing all these roles or thinking you don't need all these roles. But when something goes wrong, you really need those roles. Example I have from I worked on this intake form for gestational surrogates, right? And the AI looked at where people were dropping off and built the questions accordingly. But when I read through the questions, and thank goodness I was reading through the questions, it asked if a woman had their husband's permission to become a gestational surrogate, because that's where it sends the drop off. But I, the human, read that and was like, you can never ask a woman for if she has approval from her husband, right? And that's where AI doesn't understand these nuances and can make these risks. And especially if you're in a regulated industry, you have to be so careful with how you're approaching people, speaking to people, and also the trust you'll lose from those people if you ask something like that.
I think one of the things you're pointing out there is like one of the biggest mistakes is thinking that human trust has to then change, right? It's like you can trust AI more than you can trust the human. And it's like, no, especially in a medical or healthcare industry, you can't trust the AI to do exactly, not that it's not productive and useful, but you can't trust the AI to make those decisions, not at this point, right? And a big mistake would be not understanding that human trust still has a high value to that organization. And Tanya, any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think Andrew and Corinne definitely covered like, the I think like the base and like the most important part of it. I think people's, biggest worry with AI in general has been, the hallucinations that it brings, and like a complete erosion of critical thinking. And I think now more than ever, it's so important and like knowing when to catch it, and like, not being saturated by the volumes of output it's producing. I think that's very important. And I think, work that's very sensitive, it could be like, healthcare, finance, anything in that spectrum, you still like definitely need a human in the loop, and a human with a lot of expertise. You cannot like plug a junior person in and say they'll go figure it out, because I think that's where like, things start to go really wrong very quickly, because, when you see so much volume, like you're saturated so quickly that you say, oh, this looks right to me. And like, you move forward without, thinking twice about it. And I think, which also like, brings in like the whole question of responsibility. I think it's good for a first draft. But beyond that, you definitely have to like use your judgment and expertise and everything that you can add as a human, and like all the different correlations you have, and like, all of the past experiences that you hold to it.
I think one of the things that you bring up that's also very interesting is like if you look at the industries that are very much trying to leverage AI, right? It's healthcare, finance, and real estate, from what I understand. And those are the folks that I've been talking to, right? And then you
Mhm.
think about if something goes wrong in any of those workflows or those transactions, it is monumental, to be perfectly honest. And by far, healthcare being probably the most important one there. But like if you're trying to buy a home and something goes sideways because AI does the documentation wrong, right? Or
Mhm.
finances, right? Finance being the hugest one. If let's say you're day trading, let's say you're trying to manage your portfolio, and you're saying that AI can do that, right? There is kind of a mistake in letting the trust be so strong there, right? Even outside of the regulatory standpoint. So yeah, I very much appreciate the thoughts on that. Anything else on this one before we move on
Yeah,
to our next question?
yeah, I just think it can't be overstated enough, not only for these industries, which I'm part of one of them, but for really any industry. The currency of trust is so hard to earn and so easy to lose.
Mhm.
And optionality has never been greater, right? We're not locked in, like, the amount of options of, oh my gosh, I can just go use this service instead, or I can go do this instead. When you lose trust, you might not only be losing that moment in time, but a lifetime of support from that participant or that customer. And they may never come back, right? So I think we can't overstate trust enough, and especially with people's concerns about AI and the narrative around AI and how people automatically go to hallucinations as a fear. If it doesn't get it right, it's very easy to lose that trust very quickly. And that's not something you might even have the option to earn back, because they might not come back.
So this is also we did not plan this, but that's actually a great segue into kind of like the final question I have for the group. So we'll do one more question, and then we're going to go into the questions that are presented by the audience and ask some of those. So my last question for us as a panel here, related to what we just talked about. Do you think that AI is bringing product design and engineering closer together, or that it's creating new silos? And I'll ask that one more time. Is AI bringing product design and engineering closer together, or creating new silos? I have a very clear opinion on this, but I'd like to hear from the panelists on this one.
Um, I can go. I definitely feel like they are bringing these roles closer together. I think everything's like so interwoven and intertwined now. But what remains unique is the designer's eye, and that is not something that an engineer can, very quickly replace, or the years of, training that's gone into like developing their skill. And the same for engineering, like knowing what good code looks like, knowing what the different, you know, um, schemas look like, having that setup is not but I also like, one thing that I feel like, people don't talk about enough is that now that these roles are merging, I think that engineers, product designers, and like PMs, anyone in that loop definitely has more compassion for the other, because they do understand the work a little bit more.
That's a great point to bring up. It does build the empathy between the individuals working together, actually, because
Hmm.
the first time you try to actually generate a PR or push or actually get something into code review, right? Let's say you're a PM who actually hasn't written code, but you're starting to do that with AI. it does actually build empathy for each other. So I do actually see the connection growing stronger there, right? The one parallel I'll bring to this is there are definitely a lot of groups that I've talked to and individuals I've talked to where their org is like 50-50 on the AI adoption and the fact that it's actually bringing people together or creating new silos. Because to some extent, I think some of the employees do want to stay siloed in their role because that's what they signed up for, right? They wanted to be an engineer focused on front end, on mobile, right? They didn't want to actually take all these things on. So I think that relates more to kind of what Johnny Shaw said in the chat. Like, this question can go either way. It's really up to the individuals and management. And realistically, it's up to how they handle change management as an organization in general, which I think AI has a massive impact on is change management. Corinne, Andrew, any thoughts on this one?
I think it brings them together initially, but then the second anything breaks or it's the way you think it's working, then who's going to understand the code, right? That's where I look to an engineer. I'm like, please tell me how to fix this because I don't know. And I would also think that's where they look to me. You know, how do we design this to make it more intuitive to a user? People are getting hung up here. So vibe coding, vibe designing, all of this is great until something goes wrong. And then you need that expertise. And if someone hasn't been along building it in the first place in those roles, then companies really get hung up there. So people, you know, they'll code something for 6 months and then they have run into a problem and they have no idea what they've coded and how to fix it.
I think that also relates to like the era before AI where PMs and product designers were dealing with fires, right? And that's a lot of like what your work was, okay, where is the fire today? Okay, now let me go focus on the thing that I need to focus on. Yeah, I think that still exists. And with AI, even though you can find that maybe faster and you can identify those issues faster, it's not like you still have to solve it, right? You still have to move forward with that solution space and make sure that like it's working for those both internally and your customers. Andrew, any thoughts on this before we go to the audience questions?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I could speak for my own org, but that's a representation of one. We've obviously seen a lot of organizations laying off large swaths of an entire group of people, whether that's on the engineering side, the design side, the PM side, and it probably comes back to the leader of what they understand best, and they think that can't be replaced, but everything else can. I'm very hopeful that we're moving past that limited thinking, because to Corinne's point, the second something goes wrong, you need the expert. You just absolutely do. And I'll go back to my earlier point. That's still the most valuable person in your organization is the human person, not any other tool that you might have access to. That's always going to be the case. I sincerely believe, you know, now that's on record, so we'll see if I'm wrong in 10 years with AGI. I don't think so, right? I think humans are always going to be the most important part of an organization. I think we're moving past that. I'm really hopeful for it because we've seen these companies hire back people, right? They might hire back those people slightly differently, but they could have gotten there without that pain. In my experience, I'm seeing it bring people closer together, but still with a respect for you're still the expert. I can wade into your area and I can help benefit what you're doing and vice versa. But at the end of the day, when we need expertise, I need to call on you. You need to be in the room. And so I think it's opening up opportunities to bring people together and break down, or at least connect silos, not break them down, but connect them.
I think to your point, like I've said this before, there's this idea where there's like a return to analog to some extent. And the metaphor I like to use is I'm a musician, so the return to like vinyl records, right? Vinyl has had an explosion from a market standpoint as far as people buying vinyls again and things like that. So again, it's not the same industry, it's not the same product, but I do see us moving back to that element to some extent where the human brain is, let's say, more valued than it is at least right now. And then the other part of this too is the pure finance play where a lot of people are making OpEx moves in order to make sure like financially they're in a good place from a runway kind of like roadmap standpoint. And the other thing I'll say too is the layoffs in general have been, I'll make an appropriate joke about this, but it's like Oprah, just like you're laid off, you're laid off, you're laid off, you're laid off. Every industry I think has experienced that to some extent. And so if we talk about the human element, I think to some extent there is some empathy and bonding that is happening through that, because we're rallying around each other in this moment, as opposed to being like, well, Claude will help me figure this layoff out or whatever it is. There's a human element to that AI is not going to solve. Okay, so we're going to jump into the audience questions here. We have about 10 minutes left. Again, we are going to go with the ones that were the most upvoted. And I think I've already seen the one that is let's see, 14 votes. Yeah. So the question, 19 votes. Yeah, the same one. Okay. So this is almost what we were just talking about, actually, but similar. But how are people dealing with the overlap in roles that are occurring among product designers and engineers? And again, I'll go back to my reference earlier where I've talked to lots of organizations where the role is now builder, right? And a builder is everything. A builder is product design, engineering, QA, data scientists, every portion of it all baked into one is what I've seen people kind of like striving for. But again, the question to the group is, how are people dealing with the overlap in roles that are occurring among product designers and engineers?
Well, I'll take a stab at that. I don't think the industry has solved the approach to this, and I don't know that we're going to stay there. Honestly, I don't think we will. I think we are going to, we move to this like generalist, specialist, these transitions of focus. I think right now we're in this generalist focus because it feels really exciting that, oh my gosh, with AI, we can do everything. And to an extent that is true. I think this builds on a lot of what we've been saying, is that I can be a generalist and I can launch my own app with just me, right? That said, if I don't take the time to get a certain level of specialization in all of those areas, anytime something goes wrong there, I might not be able to fix it, right? So I think we're gonna shift back towards specialization. It might look a little different than it did pre-AI. That specialization might mean something different. The definition of what it means to be a specialist as a content person or a design person or a PM or an engineer might look different, but we will move back to specialization. In the meantime, I think we're in that messy transition where it's not clear. It's different for every organization. Some orgs have decided we're going to do it this way 100% without any change management. We're just calling it in tomorrow. And I talked to somebody who recently went through that. It's very disruptive. It's painful for people, and it's not the way I think it should be done. There's others that are moving into it more slowly, and the results are better. Now, depending on where you are in that situation, that's very individual. But I would say for anybody going through that, you have to ask yourself a few questions, which is, how does this affect me? And is my ability to operate and be valuable, perceived as valuable to this company, worth what it's going to put me through? And that's very specific to what you're being asked to do. If you are being asked to do all of these roles with specialization, AI will fill in all the gaps for you, that's going to be very difficult. And if you are in that situation, I'm sorry, because I know that that's very difficult to do. So you have to ask yourself, is it worth it? And if not, should I be looking for a place that values my expertise, knowing that I can move into these other areas, but not necessarily own right away those other areas? And we still do need engineering specialists and PM specialists that get it. So I think this is a very personal, individual response that there's not one good answer for. It really is about asking yourself, is it right for me to go through this? That might be your only option, right? A lot of us are in that place, especially in an age of seemingly endless layoffs. We don't feel comfortable looking for something else or risking our employment. So it's a difficult spot to be in. So I think asking yourself those questions are really important right now.
And I appreciate I appreciate the human element of that too, because I like to tell people I've had friends and former coworkers who have been through layoffs, and I like to just emphasize to them that like your value is still there. just because your organization is not seeking the value that you're bringing doesn't mean your value has gone away. You're still very important to those around you. You're very important to yourself. You're very important to your family, your friends, and your coworkers. So for those who are mentally, if you're going through kind of that kind of like struggle in the trenches, like, I got laid off, what do I do now? You have so much value, and keep that in mind as you're going through this. Because again, what we've talked about is like, if you can identify problems and then find a way to get to that solution space, and you can use AI, great, right? If you just use it a little bit, that's good, but your value doesn't disappear because your organization changes what they see as value. So Corinne, if you wanted to say something.
Oh, I just think that if you expect someone to be able to do engineering, product design, and product management all very well, you're lying to yourself, right? Like you can be very good at 2 of the 3, but being amazing at 3 of the 3, you're looking for a unicorn. And even if that person, I'm not saying they don't exist, but it's so rare. So as companies try and collapse all these roles together, I think it's more reasonable to try and collapse 2 of them and find someone who's good at 2 of the 3 to like a passing amount. But really, you can only truly specialize, I think, in one of these 3 areas. And in the beginning part, you can get away with it. When you're vibe coding something, maybe then you can get away with doing all the roles. But when you're a real product and you need people to really go in depth on things, you're going to need at least to separate it. So someone's doing 2 of the 3. And then I would imagine eventually, as you're really mature, you're going to need a specialist for each of those and a team of those specialists. So the way a company's handling it, I think, is also a reflection or as an organization.
Yeah, no, I agree with that, and I'm actually gonna move over to Tanya because we're a little low on time. But Tanya, any thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I think that
It's okay. We also have your dog can totally participate. We appreciate that. Go for it. Go for it.
I'm so sorry. I did not
No,
know
it's
that.
special guest. It's a special guest. We love it. Go for it.
I have someone at my door, and so he's like starting to really lose it. But I think he's made his appearance now, and he's a little dachshund who's like so vocal. So I'm okay. I think he's like settled now. I'm so sorry about this, but yeah. I think I'm gonna skip this one and let you go ahead, and then maybe come back.
Oh no, you're good. We can still hear you. By the way, you're totally
Okay,
fine. We'll go on
perfect.
to another question. This will be the last one for today. We will try to do some follow up on the existing questions, but thanks for submitting them. I think this is really also giving us a better perspective on kind of just the general thoughts in the industry. So our last question for today, and then I will ask like. This will be our last question overall. What are some tried and true ways UX product designer stands out in today's job market? And I'll relate that to kind of the other question we were going to talk about. If you had to give one piece of advice to a product or a design professional starting to use AI tomorrow, basically, kind of what advice would you give them? So the main question again being, what are some tried and true ways a UX product designer stand out in today's job market?
Sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I think first it's important to remember that there is like no tried and true and best way. Like you kind of have to get started and keep trying and like find your way through it. I think and like just like opening up yourself to like being open to trying and like learning and like looking at what others are doing. I think there are so many good examples out there. I'm sure Corinne and Andrew will have more to say about this more specifically. But if you were to like kind of start today from scratch, I would fully, like as we touched upon earlier, fully focus on the problem you're trying to solve. Like a good starting point is like picking one activity that you absolutely dislike doing, and seeing how you can use AI to like really help out with that. Or another thing to do is which is what my dad has been doing like post retirement, is he like looks at problems that my mom has or my brother has or I have, and he built us like a little AI bot. The other day he sent me like a bot to go talk to him like when I'm feeling bored and like when he's not awake, and I was like, I don't want to do that. But I think it's just like picking like a small problem that you can help like someone solve, or if your friend's starting a company, like build their website, like and that's like a real thing that you can like then take forward and showcase in any way that you can. But yeah, I think that is like the place that I would start.
Okay, thank you, Corinne.
I would say storytelling is so important as to why you did something, right? Tell me the story of how you saw a problem, you went after it, you researched, you tackled, and then what the outcome was, right? So that narrative arc is so important. I think there's a lot of tools now, Descript, Loom, where you can kind of record yourself telling the story and even embed that with maybe a slideshow in your portfolio. I started doing that because especially as you move up the chain, so to speak, your ability to tell the story and advocate and say why you did something is so important to leadership, right? Why do you need the funding, or why do you need the headcount? You need it so that you can whatever.
And Andrew?
Yep. Okay. So how many of us have seen a job description that said, we're looking for somebody who knows how to use Figma, right? Sure, it's a requirement way down at the bottom, must have experience with Figma, but is the title of it Figma designer? No, it's a designer. So what I would suggest is go back and look at what the definition of a good designer is. I guarantee you it won't say somebody who knows how to use ChatGPT, right? The design skill is always going to be fundamental. Right now, we're in a phase of tools being the hot thing. Figma used to be the hot thing when it first came out, and it was like, "Ooh, I know how to use Figma. Ooh, very cool." That didn't become the selling point after a while. AI won't always be the selling point. It is right now, right? So yes, you do need to be able to showcase that you know how to use a certain tool. That won't always be the case. So what I would say is lean into what makes you a great designer. Understand that there's different tools that can aid you in that. And right now, people want to see those tools. So for right now, yes, you need to be able to demonstrate, I know how to use a certain tool. So to Tanya's point, look, this is what I did with AI. I know how to use it. That separates me from a lot of people right now. But don't lose sight of the fact that good designers are not the tools they use. Just like a good carpenter doesn't mean owning a hammer.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So lean into what it means to be a great designer and add in the tools that are necessary to do that, be able to demonstrate you know how to use them. But that's not going to be the selling point for very long.
And that is going to wrap up the time here. I'll give my one little word of advice as well. Just stay on the human first AI native approach. That is my one word of advice that I'll give to everybody. Human first AI native. Use the tool, but rely on the thing that is actually, has the brain that then uses the tool, right? So human first AI native is the approach that I think everyone should try to take at this time. So I'll go ahead and pass this over to Hannah as well. And thank you again to all the panelists in the audience for joining us today.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you all. We covered a lot of ground. And I know, like Chris mentioned, there were a lot of questions in the chat that we didn't get to. So we'll try to do some follow-up and get you those responses as soon as possible. We also shared a feedback survey on your screen and in the chat. So if you have any thoughts on the session or want to let us know which topics you would like to see next, feel free to give us your thoughts there. Thank you all again, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.